All right, good morning. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Gunn, Chair of the Power-Based Violence Task Force for NSHE. Good morning. It's nice to welcome you all here today for our quarterly meeting. By way of getting started, I will turn it over to Associate General Counsel.
Thank you, Chair. Linda King, for the record. We'll begin the meeting by announcing that members of the public who wish to submit public comment via telephone may do so by calling 1-669-900-9128 and entering meeting ID number 910-0378-4066. And when asked for the passcode, you may enter 777777. We'll move on to roll call now. Ms. Lisa Allison. Dr. Kavita Batra.
Present.
Ms. Patricia Charlton. The Chair of the Chancellor is absent today. Dr. Stephanie Coleman. Mr. Jordan Fichette.
Present.
Ms. Erin Frock.
Present.
Dr. Tabor Griswold.
Present.
Chair Gunn.
Present.
Ms. Christine Hall.
Present.
Mr. Kevin Leon Martinez. Thanks. No worries. Mr. Sean Mabanta.
Present.
Mr. James Martinez.
Present.
Mr. Jose Melendrez.
Present.
Dr. Allison Netsky.
Present.
Ms. Michelle Sposito. Ms. Lindsay Walterbeck. Chair, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you so much. Moving on to agenda item 1, public comment.
Is there any public comment in Reno?
There is no public comment in Reno.
Thank you. Is there any public comment in Las Vegas? We have no public comment in Las Vegas. SCS, do you have anybody on the call-in number for public comment?
There are no online callers at this time.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Moving on to agenda item 2, which is the chair's report. First of all, good morning again. Thank you all for your time and energy in being with us this morning. I'd like to first thank our colleagues in both NSHE offices for your assistance and support in making today's meeting possible. Thank you as well to our colleagues from UPD who were also here this morning. Like to also, we'll do formal welcomes in just a moment, but recognize that we have new members here today, and I appreciate your willingness to serve the system in this capacity. The large focus of this meeting is centered on a high-level overview of the survey results that was distributed to all NSHE students in the fall, as well as presentations by our colleagues at participating institutions. And so just an advance thank you for those presenting as well. A note of gratitude for our colleagues at UNR who administered the survey and assisted with the compilation of results. So thank you to Dr. Dahar and her team at UNR Sawyer Center. I very much appreciate that. I anticipate that today's meeting will ground us in that high-level overview of the survey results, which has been a large focus of the task force to date, and coupled with the presentations by the institution. That will help us align as a task force an assessment of the climate per our students' perspectives with the services and practices at the institutions. From there, we'll move into our next phase of significant work, which will be to to take a look at those results, take a look at what we have by way of student support, and do some analysis and fact-finding and further investigation as to where we're doing a great job, where we might want to add some attention and support and for resources for our student populations. And so with that, I will turn the meeting over to agenda item 3, which is our minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Any opposition? Okay. Is there, okay, seconded the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, motion carries. Thank you so much. All right, moving to agenda item 4, as mentioned previously, introductions of new members. I will turn to my left here and ask Mr. Fischetti to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about your alignment with your expertise with the task force work.
Thanks so much, Chair Gunn. As stated, my name is Jordan Fischott. I oversee registered student organizations, involvement, and fraternity and sorority life at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I'm here today as a new member to learn. Very interested in making sure that we can make headway in what is a very critical area of need for our students. I've been working in fraternity and sorority life for almost 15 years, so a lot of experience in harm reduction and here to serve in any way that I can.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your service and introduction. Turning to my right, Mr. Melendez.
Good morning, everybody. Jose Melendres. I am the interim vice president for diversity initiatives and chief diversity officer at UNLV. I also hold my other position in the School of Public Health, where I am the executive director for community partnerships. My foundation is as a social worker over the years, and I've done a lot of work with family engagement, at-risk youth, gangs, and all kinds of incredible experiences that led. I've been at this May. It'll be my 18th year at UNLV, and like my previous colleague said, I'm here to learn, and I'm excited to be representing UNLV on this committee. Thank you.
Thank you as well for your service and for your expertise in saying yes to the task force. Ms. Hall?
Yes, my name is Christina Hall. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the interim director of the Care Center at UNLV. So those who may not be familiar with our office, we provide support to folks who have been impacted by power-based violence on UNLV campus, as well as the College of Southern Nevada and Nevada State College. So we provide advocacy, case management, support services, connection to resources for folks who've experienced violence. We also do a lot of work in prevention, education, and outreach areas. I have been with the Care Center for a little bit over 2 years, and prior to that have worked in the anti-violence field for about 10 years, working for the Rape Crisis Center here in Las Vegas, which is now called Signs of Hope, for about 7 years, working with Nevada Institute for Children's Research and Policy and their Prevent Child Abuse Nevada organization. And I'm really excited to help the work of the task force in moving forward the work of preventing and responding to power-based violence in higher education.
Thank you so much as well. And again, I appreciate your service to the task force. Turning to Mr. Leon Martinez, I believe you're joining us for the first time, so warm welcome to you.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Okay, thank you, Chair. My name is Kevin Lee Martinez. I'm currently a fourth-year student here at UNLV, former student body president. So I'm honored here to serve the board as kind of like a reflection of the student voice and concerns. So I'm really glad that you all extended the invitation to me, and I'm looking forward to working with you all.
Thank you as well for saying yes, especially during your fourth and busy year in your studies. So welcome. Thank you for your time. That concludes introductions of new members. We'll move to agenda item 5, climate survey results overview. This is an agenda item with supporting materials, and I will be co-presenting the presentation with Dr. Tabor Griswold of UNR and graduate research assistant Taya Gianetta, who are in our UNR, our Reno office. So to provide a brief introduction, this is a high-level overview of our survey results. The survey was administered in the fall per the mandate in the legislation. Originally, the survey fell under Senate Bill 347, which was passed in the 81st legislative session in 2021. It was the task force and the related survey were termed the Nevada System of Higher Education Task Force on Sexual Misconduct. In the subsequent legislative session, the survey and task force was renamed to the Power-Based Violence Task Force. That broadened the scope of the mission of the task force and also the purpose of the survey. We'll touch on definitions in just a moment. Per the task force recommendations, we contracted with our colleagues and experts at the Center for Surveys and Statistics and the Sawyer Center for Justice Studies at UNR. And once again, thank you to our colleagues who worked with us to compile, administer the survey there. 7 of our 8 institutions enroll students, and so the survey was administered to those to students at those 7 institutions. There were some exclusions as to who was surveyed, and you'll hear those in just a moment. The next slide. Is the background that I just mentioned. So moving on to the next slide, which is methodology. This speaks to a little bit about the context and how we came about compiling and administering the survey. For those of you who've been with us for some time, you may recall that the survey was a compilation of best practices, expert reviewers, and the task force updates and edits to the survey. It was also revised based on approval from the Board of Regents in June, based on the new legislation and the new terminology and purpose of the survey. In working with our colleagues at UNR, the survey was administered via Qualtrics and was sent to all of our participating institutional students with the exclusion of dual enrollment students in the fall semester. Of course, just in good methodology with survey distribution, students were reminded multiple times. And you can see in your materials our institutions where students receive the survey. Moving on to our definitions, as referenced earlier. The sexual misconduct was the original name of the task force and of the accompanying survey. If you back out a little bit, power-based violence is a broader, better best practice term. You can read the definition there, but generally it includes, it's a larger umbrella that includes the term and definitions of sexual misconduct. And it also includes other kinds of power-based violence, such as stalking, dating violence, exploitation, voyeurism, unwanted harassment, power-based harassment via social media, and so forth. We define these terms for our students numerous times. Students may be familiar with sexual misconduct and sexual assault, but power-based violence is a newly emerged best practice term, at least in for our purposes. It's widely known in the professions across the country. But we took the opportunity to define this for our students multiple times to ensure that we provided them with the best information to best answer the survey questions. So that's the broad scope of our definitions. And again, I'm glad that we're using power-based violence, as it is a more accurate and broad term for some of the misconduct that might happen. All right, with that, I will pause and turn this over to my colleague, Dr. Griswold at UNR, for our summary of findings.
Good morning. This is Tabor Griswold. The survey was originally opened up in December, And I think that a lot of the tremendous response rate that we had may have been contributed to a comment that we have in the footnote in the document about that opened 5 days before the shooting that happened in the UNLV campus. And this may have been a very large contributor to the tremendous response that we had in the survey. So the beginning of the survey, the students were asked about their attitude about campus leadership, and they responded with a positive attitude towards leadership. There is a variation which exists between the smaller and the larger campuses, with the smaller campuses feeling more comfortable and having a higher positive outlook. Many students expressed that they felt that leadership were very supportive of those students who chose to make reports about power-based violence that they had experienced. The UNR students expressed opinions in this survey that victims needed more support. Students at other institutions were not really aware of victimization occurring amongst their friends and in their larger student community. They felt that they could affect change or intervene to stop power-based violence. Many UNR students felt that they could not affect a change in their student community. UNR students knew more victims when compared to other institutions, and because they had witnessed risky situations, they reported intervening personally through asking the person at risk if they needed help. The UNR students were the group most interested in recognizing and preventing power-based violence. These students actively want to prevent violence and want their campus leaders to provide more campus resources for students so that they feel supported and thusly validated. So that I've kind of done my summarization, so please go to the next screen. Next slide. Okay. So this is more of the detail. There we go. So the survey, so if you look at this list, you can see how we had a tremendous number of students who participated in this survey. Yes, we know that our the overall student community is very, very large, but any survey that has thousands of respondents is successful in its way. And so what was really interesting about this whole distribution and the part that I am starting to discuss here has to do with the demographics. Next slide. So the demographics covered these various areas, and I'm just going to give a summary on them. Of the students responding to the race and ethnicity question, I found that the distribution would be very interesting. Most students at UNR identified as Caucasian or white, and was 59.2%, followed by Asian American at 16.8%. UNLV had 38.4% of students identifying as white, and 30.7% students self-defining as Hispanic. And the Hispanic, Latino, or Latino were the largest reporting groups at the other 5 institutions, ranging between 17.5% and 39%. This in itself is a remarkable finding because of who the students were that answered this survey. Females at birth were the dominant majority of those completing the survey. What was interesting is the many men who also answered the survey. It was not a dominant, it was primarily women who answered it, but the men were a very large subsection of it. Of the students who answered the question about sexual orientation, the majority of them did select straight, but there was a varying collection about their sexual orientation, ranging between the gay, lesbian, bisexual, I don't know, prefer not to answer, or something not listed above. Lesbian was the preferred second choice. Most students said they were not transgender, and the primary answer selected was either refuse to answer or gender nonconforming. Of the students who answered the question about primary language, the internet, excuse me for a moment, primarily it's English, though almost 16% selected a range of other languages, and only Great Basin and Western Nevada had 95% or higher of those speaking only English. There was a large representation of the international students, with the majority being from UNR, followed by UNLV, and several institutions who did not have any international students participate in the survey. The employment structure was UNR having the most students working part-time at 40%, Great Basin the most students working full-time at 50%, and Nevada State University with the most students not working at almost 60%. The last question was about financial support, and it was specifically targeting or specifically asking about non-financial aid, as in from family or other sources. And it ranged from a 50-50 split at UNR to a 27-73 split at Great Basin College. The survey is divided into 11 sections. Next page, please. And I'm not going to go into all of the detail, which is in the report. I'm just going to summarize the brief headings on this. Campus policies and procedures section asks questions about the students' perception of the campus leaders, specific behaviors of leadership, and power-based violence reporting. This included faculty knowing where to go if you needed help, or what they can do with the administration's approaches to helping protect students from harm. Bystander readiness addressed students' perception of power-based violence at their institutions and their opinions about corrective action. Is it a problem? And can they affect change after witnessing a problem? Which leads into reporting observations of power-based violence, in addition, but specifically sexual misconduct or sexual assault. If they responded yes to having this experience, then additional questions were asked. The alcohol and sexual opportunities addresses the students' perception of sex, sexual misconduct, and sexual assault, whether alcohol made people feel differently about other people, and ask them if their opinions of these statements about the behavior that they saw. The power-based violence by a perpetrator addresses students' experience with the power-based violence, whether they had instigated it or be the recipient of it. And if it had been through text messaging or social media. This is a very complex question, and so it was followed up with more about how the actions actually happened using these tools. And it's on both sides of the equation. Relationships addressed questions about their current personal relationship and asked about the nature of there being any power-based violence within that relationship. The interpersonal, this slide will be by somebody else. So I'm just doing this, the overview of this. The interpersonal violence is within the relationship and how what was combined with it. The abuse norms was about their student friends and things that they had observed, things that may have disturbed them, how alcohol was affected in this. The perpetrator was if the student had been involved in doing this to another student, the unwanted sexual experiences and unwanted sexual contact victims are an interrelated group, and the students were asked questions about this. These are very delicate questions, a very delicate subject matter, and now I'm going to turn it over to our analysts who worked with the data. Thank you very much.
My name is Taya Gianetta, and you can go to the next slide. So before we get into the results, I kind of want to orient everyone to how we will present the results. So both Demi and I are going to generally report the findings for each section that Dr. Griswold just mentioned, as well as go over the figures that are in each slide. For any exact statistics or descriptions, just please refer to the report, as we don't have time to go over everything. So for this first section, it's about the campus policies and procedures, as well as students' perceptions of their campus leaders and the specific behaviors of their leadership. And so all of these differences we did find were significant with the chi-square analysis. So first, I'll start with some results regarding the campus perceptions. So most participants did agree that faculty were generally concerned about their welfare. However, when asked about administrators, many students only responded with a neutral response instead of agreeing, with only 40% of students at UNLV and WNC agreeing. And so then also students were asked if they were happy at their institutions, and most of the students at UNR, UNLV, CSN, and WNC did agree, but most students at NSU, GBC, and TMCC did strongly agree. So we did have about 4 to 6% of the students at each institution report that they strongly disagreed, that they knew where to get help if they were sexually assaulted. And furthermore, 6 to 10% of those students also at each campus strongly disagreed that they even knew what the procedures were to address their complaints of sexual assault. Importantly to note, 18% of UNR students reported that they did not have confidence that administrators will address these sexual assault complaints fairly, with the other institution only having less than 5% of the students disagreeing. And so to compare these differences between students' perceptions of campus leadership at each institution, we did conduct a one-way ANOVA, and as well as post hocs to see where these differences were. So students tended to report positive perceptions of their campus leadership, but to note, UNR did report the most negative perceptions compared to UNLV, CSN, NSU, GBC, and TMCC. And then also we conducted the same test to compare the perceptions of specific behaviors of campus leaderships. And these results revealed that students reported moderate perceptions of their campus leaders' abilities to protect students from harm, handle crises, and then provide a good support system to these students that are going through difficult times. However, GBC did report the most positive perceptions on those behaviors that I did mention compared to CSN, UNLV, and then UNR.
Could we go to the next slide, please? My name is Demi Hart, and I'll be reporting bystander readiness. So this section addressed students' perceptions of how power-based violence at their institutions, as well as their ability to affect change. So students were asked questions similar to the one you see on the slide. After conducting a chi-square analysis, all items about to be presented in this section were found to differ significantly by the students' institutions. So this question specifically looks at whether students believe power-based violence is a problem at their school. And as you can see, students from UNR, UNLV, and CSN mostly indicated being neutral on the subject. TMCC and WNC agreed that power-based violence was an issue, whereas GBC strongly agreed that power-based violence is an issue. Notably, UNR students had the highest percentage of respondents who said that they disagreed or strongly disagreed. In addition to being asked their personal beliefs about power-based violence, they were asked how their institutions would handle power-based violence. Students largely indicated being neutral towards whether institution officials should do more to protect students. Only UNR and UNLV reported higher scores of disagreeing than the other institutions. Many students largely agreed that their institution would handle a crisis on campus well, such as students from University of Nevada, Las Vegas, College of Southern Nevada, Nevada State, Great Basin College, and West Nevada College. Or they were neutral, such as students from University of Nevada, Reno, and Truckee Meadows Community College. The majority of students at all institutions were neutral when asked if their campus responds too slowly in a difficult situation. And similarly, when asked if their institution does enough to protect the safety of their students, most students were neutral, such as UNR, UNLV, CSN, Nevada State, and TMCC, whereas others agreed, such as GBC and WNC. Finally, when asked about the quality of their institution's support system for students going through hard times, a majority of students agreed. Could we go to the next slide, please?
So this next section is about students' perceptions of reporting power-based violence, specifically with sexual misconduct and sexual assault. And so before I explain the figure on the slide, I want to first talk about students' perceptions of actually reporting at their respective institutions. So when students were asked if their institution would take a power-based violence report seriously, most students at UNLV, CSN, Nevada State, GBC, TMCC, and WNC did agree. However, out of all of those campuses, UNR had the lowest percent of students who did agree. Again, most students at those same institutions reported that they agree that institution officials would take corrective actions against the alleged offender. However, only 28.8% of students at UNR agreed with that statement. 19.8% of UNR students strongly disagreed, and then 17.4% of UNR students disagreed with that statement, which is significantly different than the other institutions who had lower percentages. And then, so again, a one-way ANOVA was conducted for students at all the institutions, and all students at these institutions rated that their campus leadership would be more likely to take reports seriously, make the report accessible to only those who are privy to that information, and then take the steps to report the person making the report. And so UNR reported the lowest likelihood scores compared to UNLV, WNC, CSN, TMCC, NSU, and then GBC. And then so now referring to the figure on the slide, students were asked if they could actually affect change if they witnessed a power-based violence situation which involved a fellow student. And so most students did agree that they could affect change if they did witness a fellow student in a power-based violence situation. But the most students at GBC were the ones who strongly agreed that they could affect change. And so we ran some post-hoc analyses, and they revealed that students felt relatively positive about their abilities to affect change or intervene when witnessing a power-based situation. However, students provided the most negative ratings at UNR compared to CSN and TMCC. And then you can go to the next slide.
So the next section examines students' perceptions of alcohol and recreational drug use when engaging in consensual sex. Chi-square analyses indicated differences between responses in students' institutions. As seen on this slide, when asked the extent to which alcohol makes people feel sexier, students largely indicated that they strongly disagreed or were neutral on the topic. When asked about the extent to which alcohol makes themselves feel sexier, students mostly strongly disagreed. Lastly, when asked about the extent to which alcohol facilitates sexual opportunities, there were mostly varied results. Students mostly strongly disagreed with this statement. However, some students at UNR and Nevada State University agreed at around 30%. Could we go to the next slide, please?
Okay, there's a slide missing.
Oh. Okay.
Oh, wait, there we go.
Okay.
Okay, so this next section is about power-based violence by a perpetrator. And so this section will address students' experiences with power-based violence. So for all of the items in this section, questions asked if the student had perpetrated in these specific behaviors that is defined by power-based violence. And so we did find that none of the results were significant, so I'll not go over those results. But it might be it's probably due to the lack of responses from the students in this section. And also most students did indicate that they had not participated in any of these perpetration behaviors. Only about 1% to 2% of the students in the entire survey did report that they participated in any perpetrator behaviors. So next I'll go through some of the differences when students were asked if someone had done any of these perpetration behaviors to them. So UNR and UNLV did have the highest percentage of students who reported that someone else had made sexual advances, gestures, comments, or jokes that were unwelcome. UNR students indicated the highest percentage of victimization of unwanted contact via text, calls, social media, or emails. And then lastly, WNC students indicated the highest percentage of being victimized by being stalked in person or virtually. And then next slide, please.
This section addresses students' current relationship statuses as well as the behavior that they might engage in with that partner. As seen on the slide, the students were pretty split between having and not having a romantic or intimate partner at the time of taking the survey. They were further asked about the behaviors they engaged in with this partner, specifically the actions they did against their partners. However, no significant differences existed across campuses, as revealed by a chi-square analysis. Overall, however, most participants reported suggesting compromises to arguments with their partner, explaining their side of an argument with their partner, as well as working out problems with their partners due to their mutual respect for each other. When asked about the behaviors their partners enacted against them, there were also no significant differences by institution. However, the majority of participants indicated that their partners would also work towards compromising after disagreements, as well as showing respect for each other. Could we go to the next slide, please?
For this section, the students were asked questions about behaviors that their partner might have exhibited, and then students were asked whether they themselves participated in these specific behaviors, and then also whether they were victims of these behaviors also. So students' own perpetration of interpersonal violence did not differ by all of the campuses, but I will highlight some of the trends that we did see in the data. So about 80% of the participants reported that they have not insulted or cursed at their partner. 90% of students reported they have not stomped out of their room or living space during a disagreement with their partner. 83% of participants said they did not say something to spite their partner. 98% of the students reported that they did not call their partner fat or ugly. And then 97 to 99% of students reported that they have not perpetrated any physical violence against their partner, such as twisting their partner's arm behind their back, shoving their partner, slapping or choking their partner, and then using a weapon against their partner. And then when these students were asked if someone had perpetrated these interpersonal violence actions against them, there are also not any significant differences across the campuses. But again, I'll highlight some of the results that we did see in the data. So as you can see on the figure on the slide, the only significant difference that we did see that was that 100% of the students at WNC reported that their partner had not stomped out during a disagreement, compared to all the other institutions who did report that this did happen to them. So students at GBC reported the highest percentage of this happening to them. And also, generally, most of the students reported that their partner did not say things to spite them, call them fat or ugly, or threaten to hit or throw something at them. And generally, about 95 to 99% of the students reported that their partner had not perpetrated any physically violent acts that I had mentioned earlier. And lastly, more than 93% of the participants reported that their partners did not perpetrate sexually interpersonal violence against them.
Can we get the next slide, please? Okay, so this section examines potential perpetration of abusive behavior. We looked at both student perpetration as well as their friends' reported behaviors. The slide here specifically looks at friends. When asked about their friends, most participants indicated that their friends would never engage in coercion or intimidation to elicit sex. This was the only significant comparison across institutions for friend behaviors. Overall, participants largely indicated that their friends did not use physical force with a person they were dating or talk about various coercion strategies, such as using alcohol or money to elicit sex. For perpetrator behaviors within the student respondents, most items were again not significant as a comparison by institution. However, they largely indicated that they had never engaged in sexual activity or touching against another person's wishes, as well as forced someone to engage in sexual activity when they knew the person did not want it. Next slide, please.
So for the unwanted sexual experience section, we asked students about their experiences with any unwanted sexual contact during their time as a student at their respective institutions. So the highest percentage of students at UNR reported that they experienced unwanted touching of a sexual nature, compared to less than 9% of students at the other institutions. When asked about unwanted oral sex, many participants said that this did not happen to them, but the highest percentage of students who did report this happening to them was at UNLV. And when asked about vaginal sex, students at Nevada State reported the highest percentage of students who did experience this. And students at UNR reported the highest percentage of students who experienced sexual penetration with either a finger or an object, compared to other campuses who had little or no experience at all. And then lastly, students at UNR reported the highest percentage of students who were coerced into being sexually available when they didn't want to be. However, Nevada State was a close second to UNR. Next slide, please.
So this section is similar to the section before this, but it specifically looks at students' most recent unwanted sexual contact during their time at their institution. When asked about their unwanted contact, they were specifically asked about whether they had been coerced into being sexually active. Most respondents indicated no, they had not been coerced, but those who did report experiencing coercive behavior were mostly from UNR, with 9.4% reporting a recent sexually coercive experience compared to the other universities. NSU was a close second, with 6.8% reporting a recent sexually coercive experience. Next slide, please.
All right, thank you both so much for providing the analyses of the findings. We'll allow time for discussion, and to frame the discussion somewhat, I wanted to remind the task force that in compiling the survey and identifying the purpose of the survey in alignment with legislation, we considered a couple of different avenues. We were provided with expert guidance on how to draft and administer the survey, and we considered whether or not to try to identify the extent of the problem, whether or not to try to identify what our climate goals would be, how to change social conditions, and consider data that practitioners might need. Those latter options would naturally precede the first option, which is to simply, from a student's perspective, identify the extent of the problem, which are the results that you just heard. With that, also a reminder that in administering the survey, we provided students with resources several times throughout the survey, and we also reminded them that at any time they had the option to opt out of any particular question or the entire survey. And so with that, I open it to discussion from task force members who might like to respond or comment.
Thanks so much, Chair. I just want to start by saying thank you so much for conducting this research and for presenting it. I appreciate the level, the depth and breadth that went into this. It clearly wasn't just, a survey monkey assessment where it's like, oh, here's what people are thinking. I appreciate the legitimacy behind this. And for the record, this is my first meeting, so I do apologize if I'm redundant or bringing up things that have been discussed in the past. But one of the things that concerned me from the get-go when we're discussing power-based violence that these results seem to support is, even though and majority of the respondents are those who are statistically the most likely to be victims of power-based violence, they still overwhelmingly indicated that they do not have interest in participating in prevention training. And I think one of the challenges we have in front of us is that research has indicated overwhelmingly that bystander intervention training has incredibly diminishing returns, and that the right time to get to students is generally between 11 and 14 years of age. So I think one of the things that the task force, we might find ourselves in a position of considering is, while I think people may look at this task force and say, okay, well, what are we doing on our campuses? And I'm sitting across from our interim director of the care center who does a phenomenal job. So please don't misinterpret this as me saying we don't need those services. But I think it might be finding a wider scope and partnering with institutions that are reaching students at a younger age when that is the time that they are critically developing healthy relationship skills. So yes, I just wanted to share that. And again, thank you so much for presenting this information for us. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jordan, for your comments, and I agree with what you've stated. I think when we think about primary prevention of power-based violence, where we hopefully are stopping it before it starts, the younger we can build those skills, the better. Oh, sorry. Okay. Microphone's on now, so hopefully everyone can hear. So I was just saying that when we're thinking about primary prevention of power-based violence, focusing on younger ages is great because we're building those healthy relationship skills. We're teaching about consent at an early age, whereas as people get older, they get into their habits and it's harder to break. I know that we have wonderful resources across the state that work in the community outside of higher education that we can partner with, that do have a little bit more of a scope in the broader community to reach those ages. And I think there's great opportunities to partner with. And I think that we can also start to think out of the box in how we address prevention on college campuses. I know that the Care Center has historically engaged in bystander intervention trainings that have had mixed results, and maybe just there are maybe some more creative ways that we can address prevention that will work best with our communities on the various campuses, which may look different for each individual campus, depending on those student populations. So I really appreciate that shout out to prevention, and I think it's really important. And I also am a little, I want to echo what Jordan said about the concern about the rates of reporting of experiencing power-based violence. Just based on the Care Center numbers, I have a feeling that it's a little bit higher institution-wide. So I wonder if we're reaching the right people, or if everyone feels comfortable reporting it through a survey. And I don't know what the answer to that is, or what we could do to increase the level of comfortability for people to self-disclose that they've experienced power-based violence. But I have a sneaking suspicion that it might be a little bit higher than what we're seeing in these results. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Kevin Martinez for the record. Yeah, I'm kind of like following up with what Ms. Christina Hall mentioned was, though it was stated that these were good results, it was a good result for a survey yielding. I'm concerned that's almost around 5% of the entirety of the student body within NSHE. And from what I've seen in the results, there's kind of like a difference of perception versus reality. A lot of students perceive that there's an issue in their campus about power-based violence, but the level of like actual incidents, it's fairly low compared to the perception. So I'm just concerned that people within the state might interpret this as like we don't have such a serious issue within the state because the numbers are so low. We just have kind of like an awareness issue. So I'm just a little bit concerned that this survey might be misused in the future for legislation. So I'm hoping that we kind of like keep the notion that even though it might be a small number within the survey, we don't know how many people actually felt comfortable filling out the survey, felt safe filling out the survey, or like how many people even knew about the survey to begin with. So those were like some concerns that actually some students reached out to me about the survey, that they didn't want to feel like, oh, just because we're such small numbers statistically, our voices are going to be unheard of. And then the other thing that I've kind of noticed is that, first of all, like a lot of our institutions have a lot of resources when it comes to like these topics. We have the care center in our school. I know UNR has their centers as well. So there needs to be a change in trajectory within campuses of better marketing of resources. I feel like that will kind of like help students know where to go or like what to do when it happens. Because sadly, even if it happens, it's great when they have the resources really available to them within the few hours or the days after. I don't feel like they should be waiting days or weeks to talk to somebody. And we do have those resources. So I'm hoping institutions statewide focused more of marketing and investing in the resources that we already have, because we have really great resources, rather than using this kind of like surveys to look for other resources, or like look for like increasing resources or like divergent resources already in their budgets. So I just feel like we need to market more what we have and then build up from there. So this is just kind of like a few points that I've noticed. Marketing resources have been a big issue at UNLV. We have a lot of really good people at really good places, but sadly not a lot of students know about it, mainly because we have a lot of commuter student body. So that could be a factor into it, but I feel like, we can do much more when it comes to investing and marketing the resources that we have. And I'm pretty sure every single institution should do the same.
Elizabeth Gunn for the record. Thank you so much for your comment, Mr. Leon Martinez. That speaks to the importance of having student representation and students at the table. So I appreciate your perspective. It's valued and important. I'd like to take a moment to recognize Senator Scheibel, who's joined us, who is a co-sponsor of the legislation. Thank you for making time in your busy schedule to join us today.
Not sure if you wanted me to say anything, but thank you so much for having me. I did take a look at the agenda, so I'll be listening in throughout the day, and really appreciate everybody's hard work on this issue.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions, comments from our task force colleagues in Reno? All right. Thank you once again to the co-presenters for presenting these survey results. So much appreciated. And thank you for your work behind the scenes as well and preparing for today. Just to summarize some of the comments, any survey instrument is imperfect, and certainly the rate of return is of importance. Going forward, we'll continue to improve the instrument as we're required to administer it over and over again. And identifying ways to engage students and encourage participation to their comfort level. I also wanted to mention, in considering the survey, that it's a significant milestone in the task force work, and this is a nascent task force yet to date. And I think it's important that we have to note that we compiled a survey and administered it in a state where it's not quite we're ahead of the game nationally in doing this. So while imperfect and while we can always certainly improve, I commend the system for the collaboration and launching the survey this fall. With that, why don't we take a 5-minute break before we move to our next agenda item, which is a presentation from our colleagues from our partner institutions. All right, welcome back. Elizabeth Gunn for the record. We'll turn to agenda item 6, institutional services inventory. and noting the agenda description, representatives from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, University of Nevada, Reno, College of Southern Nevada, Great Basin College, Nevada State University, Truckee Meadows Community College, and Western Nevada College will present information regarding the services available on their campus for victims of power-based violence. And the definition is here once again. Power-based violence refers to any form of interpersonal violence intended to pressure, control, intimidate, or harm another person through the assertion of power over the person. The term includes, without limitation, dating violence, domestic violence, family violence, gender-based violence, violence based on sexual orientation or gender identity or expression, sexual assault, sexual harassment, sexual exploitation, stalking, or the observation of another person who is naked or engaging in sexual activity without their consent, including without limitation, voyeurism. And then linked there are the presentations. And so once again, to begin with, a note of gratitude for the institution's collaboration in preparing these reports and to the colleagues who will be presenting. And we will we'll simply go in order of the institutions as they're listed in the agenda. And so with that, I'm pleased to turn the presentation time over to Ms. Hall, once again, Interim Director for the UNLV Care Center, and Mr. Jose Melendez, Interim Vice President for Diversity Initiative, Chief Diversity Officer at UNLV.
Thank you, Chair. Do you want me to go first and just go ahead, Jose?
Go ahead,
Thank
please.
you. All right, I will do that. So for the record, again, this is Christina Hall, Interim Director of the Care Center, located at University of Nevada, Las Vegas. It looks like our slides are up. I'm just going to go through a brief overview of the work of responding and preventing power-based violence at UNLV. And how we go about doing that and the resources we have. I'll also be reviewing a few of the numbers highlighted from the last calendar year, so calendar year 2023, to give everyone a picture of what we're seeing on campus as far as who have access to these resources. So next slide. We've already discussed the definition of power-based violence, and I think we can easily get lost in the minutia of that whole big list of things. I think the reason why we like the term power-based violence is it centers us on the idea that this is all about actions that take away someone else's power and control, right? And that can be extremely harmful and can be impactful on the person as a whole. So next slide. So a little bit about the Care Center, which I did introduce at the beginning of this meeting, but just as a review, the Care Center offers confidential, virtual and in-person support services to members of University of Nevada, Las Vegas, Nevada State University, and College of Southern Nevada communities. So I want to touch on really briefly, we are confidential victim advocates as protected in Nevada state statute, which means that anyone who seeks services or discloses to a victim advocate that has been certified by our center can be sure that their information will be held in confidential status. So that means that we will not share it with any other university offices, family, friends, professors, anything like that, unless we are given permission directly from our client stating that they want us to share and what it is they want us to share in order to help connect them to the resources that they need. And as you see, we also provide these services to Nevada State University and College of Southern Nevada. That work is supported by grant funding, federal grant funding, victims of crime, to provide those services, since we cannot use UNLV state funding to provide services to Nevada State University and College of Southern Nevada. So that grant funding can be give or take, depending on whether it's awarded, right? So this is something that we hope to continue, and we have to apply for every year to be able to continue to provide those services. And that has been in place for about 2 years as well. So as far as the services that we do provide, we provide direct client services, healing services and workshops, campus education and awareness events. And this is for students, faculty, and staff of all of these institutions who have been experiencing power-based violence. So next slide. There are a couple of different ways that students, staff, and faculty can connect with our office. We have a care line, a hotline. So if you think of it like that, that's available Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And that is staffed during that time, and that is the number that can be called. You can also schedule a virtual or in-person appointment through our website, and appointments are available starting at 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Virtual appointments can be set up an hour prior to 9 and an hour after 4. And all of our, anyone who connects with our office can be assured that they will be able to receive confidential advocacy, emotional support, and connection to resources. Next slide. So just another snapshot of all of the work that the Care Center does. I mentioned the direct client services. We have at least one healing-centered event called Healing Through Connections each semester that we try to do a mixture of in-person and virtual. We also have the Care Advocate Training Institute. So like I'm going to mention further in this presentation, a lot of the direct advocacy that is conducted by student peers. And so in order for them to do that, they need to be trained on how to conduct that advocacy work. And so our Care Advocate Training Institute is a 45-hour program that is conducted during the summer prior to the next school year starting, where our volunteers are trained on how to provide that confidential advocacy to their peers. This training is nationally certified so that when our advocates complete it, they are considered nationally certified victim advocates. The other work that we do is campus education and student engagement, which can look a lot of different ways and often looks different from year to year and semester to semester, doing different events, different presentations, and things to the campus community. We provide institutional advocacy, so we sit on task forces like this one and other meetings and boards where we can advise the campus community on how to best support folks who have been impacted by power-based violence. We also have a scholarship fund that we can provide, not necessarily to folks who have experienced power-based violence. It's not limited to that, but folks can apply each year. Next slide. So when we talk about direct client services, this is a snapshot of what can be provided when a person meets with an advocate in our office. So an advocate will provide emotional support or hold space. They always create a safety plan, and a safety plan is something that is tailored to the specific situation and can be something as simple as, when I'm experiencing anxiety, these are some self-care tactics that I can do to bring down my nervous system and get back to equilibrium, to something a lot more complex, like how to navigate leaving a toxic situation in the safest way possible. And through that work, we're ensuring that person's personal safety as much as we can, while also honoring the fact that they are the experts in their own situation, and we can provide them with some tools to navigate their situation. And then what our advocates will do is assess the most prevalent needs for that client and connect them to the most relevant resources for those needs. And those can be academic needs, medical needs, financial needs, reporting needs, and self-care needs, and healing needs. And we will connect them to resources. So we have a number of warm referral processes for on-campus as well as community resources. We can also, in some situations, provide accompaniment. So if somebody would like to make a report to Title IX, we can provide an advocate to accompany them to that meeting with Title IX to be an emotional support person, to take notes, and to be able to be a space to debrief afterwards if any emotions came up during that process. And so if we go to the next slide, I wanted to do a little plug about our Care Advocate Training Institute because most of the direct client services that are conducted are done by our peers, our peer volunteers. And so I wanted to give a little shout out to our Care Advocate Training Institute because we spend a lot of time making sure that our peer support folks are in a situation where they have all the information that they need to provide really excellent advocacy to the folks that they meet with. And so our training program has in-person elements, virtual elements, and a lot of practice sessions before they even meet with a client. And they are highly supervised by staff throughout the year. They have to submit their notes or intake forms that are reviewed, and we make sure that they are providing the resources and support that are appropriate for folks who come to our office. Next slide. So our care advocates, like I mentioned, cover our care line. So they are the ones who staff that Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. care line. They also take scheduled appointments during their shift. And we try to have at least 2 advocates on the line during those open hours. Just as a snapshot, in 2023, 72% of all client meetings were conducted by care advocates and not by professional staff. Which is helpful since we only have 1 professional staff member who does direct client service. So we really rely on those volunteer care advocates. They also help us with our campus education. So they facilitate our presentations that we do in classes and as part of new student orientation and things like that. They participate in our outreach events and just promote as student leaders the care center services and try to get out that outreach and marketing that is so sorely needed, like we talked about earlier. Next slide. So to talk a little bit about the numbers that we are seeing at the care center, we are the only campus-based advocacy center in Southern Nevada that serves folks who have been impacted by power-based violence. So knowing that, the care center served a total of 208 clients in 2023. Of those 208, 96% of those served were UNLV students, staff, and faculty. 120 of them were new or unduplicated clients. 48 of them were high acuity cases requiring long-term case management follow-up, which usually meant an average of 5 to 7 follow-up meetings and appointments and things like that after the initial intake. 18% were low acuity cases requiring only 1 or 2 meetings of follow-up to meet their needs, and 22 disclosed other concerns outside of power-based violence. Next slide. So of those new unduplicated clients that presented to the care center, these are the different types of violence that they experienced and the breakdown. So it's pretty spread across of what they have experienced. And just a caveat on this, some of our new unduplicated clients reported experiencing multiple types of this. So if you add up these percentages, they do not equal 100. So we saw that 27.5% of clients have experienced sexual violence, 27% experience family violence. And for those of you unfamiliar with this term, we use it to describe students most commonly who are experiencing a toxic and abusive environment in their home, generally by a parent, guardian, or sibling. So essentially, if you think of child abuse, and now they're not children anymore, but they're still living at home and experiencing the toxic environment. Relationship and domestic violence was 25%, stalking was 10%, other was 25.8%. So this other can include and is not limited to other trauma, including community trauma, mass violence, grief, mental health concerns, roommate conflict, which can be a little bit tricky. And oftentimes what we would do with folks who experience these things is we would refer them to the most appropriate resources, which may not be our office all of the time. Next slide. So we know that those folks who experience this type of violence are experiencing trauma, and that has an impact on the person as a whole. And it can affect them physically, emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. And we know this it can happen in a lot of different ways, one of which is just how our body is impacted by trauma. So if we go to the next slide, we can see that when someone is experiencing a crisis, their reptilian or survival brain, their fight, flight, freeze, fear, protect area of their brain, that's where all the resources go. And the thinking brain, the neocortex, and the limbic brain, that the resources for those areas of the brain are limited when they're in fight, flight, and freeze mode. And that can impact their development. They can impact how they respond to stressors that are maybe even totally unrelated to the violence that they're experiencing. Next slide. To kind of touch on this, I wanted to talk about a little bit what needs our clients are showing up with the most when they meet with us. So for our new unduplicated clients, these are some of the most prevalent needs or impacts that the violence has had on them. So along with the power-based violence that they're experiencing, 24% of our clients disclosed that they had needs around basic needs, 25% around safety needs, 17.5% around academic needs, 34% around financial needs, and 48.3% around healing needs. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what is most prevalent that they're showing up and wanting to see resources for and things like that. Again, clients can disclose needing multiple of these needs. So these numbers, again, don't add up to 100%. And then next slide. So just really briefly, touching on the campus education and student engagement piece, we collaborate, and if we can go to the next slide, with community healers to provide our Healing Through Connections events each semester. This focuses on helping people be more aware of alternative healing resources, not because we don't think long-term therapy is helpful. It is. Sometimes there are barriers. Sometimes you can do other healing resources in conjunction with a therapy. And so it talks about some alternative healing resources that can be available to folks. So things like trauma-informed yoga, meditation, all of those different things that can help the folks who are navigating some of those stressful situations. We also have on our next slide some of the resources that we put out to the campus community. We have some zines, our radical healing zines, that are available both virtually and can be picked up in our office and sent out to the various campuses. That can be really helpful. It's basically choose your own healing adventure and has been really helpful. We usually give it out to every client that meets with us. And on our next slide has a list of some of our presentations that we do. These are our main ones that are prepackaged and that our care advocates will primarily, we focus on students getting this information. So we have a presentation around healthy relationships, self-care, and consent. The consent one we have done successfully during Rebel Ready Week last year for UNLV. We also have on our next slide a snapshot of some of the events that we do for the campus communities. We focus heavily around October on domestic violence because that's Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and in April, sexual assault. And then we do a variety of tabling events to try and get the word out that we exist and that we are a resource that folks can access. Next slide. And that, sorry if that was lengthy, but thank you so much. And I'm open for any questions anyone might have. Unless, Jose, did you want to say anything?
No, I was just real quick, Jose, for the record, Jose Malone, just for the record, just quickly that, and not only the services the Care Center provides, but then just the alignment with everything that's happened since December 6th at UNLV, because we are on that journey to recovery and any little thing can trigger somebody. So we're very mindful of any of the program services, things that we're doing right now at UNLV, that what's the mental health component behind that. And it's part of our president's mental health initiatives that we're doing on campus right now. So I learned a lot as we were getting ready for this in this area. And so it's just, I think it's an incredible resource for us to have on campus, and that we're able to work with our sister institutions and providing these services to them as well. So thank you for all your work.
Thank you for bringing that up. I think it's very prevalent that if someone has already experienced trauma, having an additional trauma can really bring up some things and be very challenging. So having the trauma of December 6th really opened some wounds, I think, for our campus community. So thank you for bringing that up.
Kevin Martinez for the record. Thank you so much for the presentation. I do have a few questions, if you do not mind. So the first question, I know you mentioned that you heavily rely on the advocates, the peer advocates, because you only have one full-time employee at the center. I was just wondering if this is by design, or is this budgetary constraints, or what's the reason why there's only one?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to clarify, there is only one direct service staff member at the care center. We have 4 full-time staff members at the care center, but only one provides actual advocacy. The rest are admin support or doing prevention education activities. And so to answer the second part of your question, yes, partially budget constraints, right? So the care center is supported partially by university funding, but heavily by grant funding. And so we try to apply for as many grants as possible. We don't always get them. It's highly competitive. And also when we're applying for grants, it means that we are competing against community anti-violence organizations who are applying for the same pot of funding. So that's a challenge, and partially why we rely so heavily on our volunteer advocates. The other reason why we rely on them is because there is research to suggest that peer support can be really helpful, especially in higher education, where folks are a little bit more comfortable disclosing something like this to another peer versus someone that they see as a professional staff member with maybe more power and privilege. And so there's kind of 2 different reasons for that. Thank you. That was a great question.
Yes, thank you so much for the answer. That clarifies a bit. The other question that I have is, you said that the care line is usually open over the week from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Yes.
And although we do have a heavily huge communal campus, we do also have residents who live on campus the entirety of the semester. So I was just asking, how do you approach students who might have experience one of these events over the weekend or over a break? And one question I have is, are RAs on campus trained as advocates, or?
Very good question. So I'll address your first question first. So our care line is open only Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Outside of those hours, so on the weekend and during the night, it automatically routes to either one of our community anti-violence partners. So when they call the care line outside of those hours, they can either press 1 to be connected to Safe Nest, which is the local Las Vegas domestic violence organization, and press 2 for Signs of Hope, which is our sexual violence organization. And we have very strong relationships with both organizations, where we have a bi-directional warm referral process. So if their hotline gets an NSHE student, they refer to us as soon as the week starts, and then we do the follow-up and wraparound services for them. And then as far as the RAs, I think in the past we have done shorter presentations for the RAs so that they knew what resources they could direct folks to if the folks in their residence halls discloses to them. I don't think currently any current RAs are advocates, are care advocates at the moment. They are more than welcome to be, though. So we would love to have RAs be a part of our care advocate program.
And almost done. No. You said that you do serve UNLV, CSN, and Nevada State as well, but over 96% of all the services go through UNLV.
Yeah.
Besides the clear difference in population within the institutions, do you see any other reasons why the other institutions are not utilizing the care center as much?
Yeah, definitely believe that there is more of a need on that campus, and those numbers reflect. However, I think that there could be more work that we could do as far as marketing that the fact that the care center is available to those institutions. Currently, our grant funding just supports providing the services. And so doing the marketing and outreach, we don't have as many resources to do on those campuses. So I think that can be part of it. There may be a part of it, I don't know for sure, if that the student populations on CSN and NSU campuses are comfortable coming to an office that's located at UNLV. And that's also limited to virtual services. So we can only provide virtual services to those campuses. So there's a couple of barriers. But what I do know is that the folks from NSU and CSN that we have served have reported positive experiences and good outcomes when they did engage with our offices.
Okay, that's about it of my questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Elizabeth Gunn for the record. Thank you so much for the presentation. Thanks for the services that you provide and the good work that you do. Could you speak a little bit to your collaboration with your student wellness services and psychological services? Is there overlap there? I imagine there's additional staff resources.
Yes, there's Christina Hall for the record. There is a considerable amount of collaboration with other student wellness offices. We're situated within student wellness. We are part of the UNLV support team as a active member. And so there's a lot of communication that goes that way. We have warm referral processes with other offices within student wellness, including all of them. And oftentimes we will see clients who, a good chunk of our clients report needing healing resources. And so having free CAPS counseling center counseling on campus is a wonderful resource. So we often will refer folks over to CAPS. We will provide accompaniment to folks who want to make a report with the Office of Student Conduct. That can be a really excellent way for folks to get a no contact order without having to go through the process of a civil protection order. And so we do a lot of work to keep those relationships healthy and active so that we can provide clients with the resources that they need and the connections they need on campus. Thank you.
Elizabeth Gunn for the record. Any other comments, questions for our UNLV colleagues? All right, thank you both so much for the presentation information. Now turning to our colleagues from UNLV. I'm sorry, from UNR, my apology. I'll turn it over to Eric James, Chief of Police, Northern Command, and Zeva Edmondson, Director of Equal Opportunity and Title IX.
Hello, good morning. I'm Zeva Edmondson, and I'm the Director of Equal Opportunity and Title IX at UNR. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all this morning. Just real quick, I have been with UNR for about 8 months, and I've been out doing an introduction and listening tour, if you will, since I got here. And I've met with several different students, student groups, things like that. And I think that your survey does reflect what I'm seeing as well. I appreciate all the hard work that everyone did on the survey, and it's very helpful to me. And so with that end, President Sandoval supports our office in providing additional staffing. So we will have a prevention education specialist added, that their primary position will be working with power-based violence issues. And I'm very pleased to say it posted today. So that went up today for UNR. So I'll go ahead and next slide, please. Ooh, that's small font. We have the definition, of course, of power-based violence there, which includes what we've listed: dating violence, domestic violence, family violence, gender-based violence against sexual orientation or gender identity and expression, sexual assault, harassment, exploitation, and stalking. Of course, these are all things that we work with and address in our Office of Equal Opportunity in Title IX. Next slide. The services for our folks that are affected by power-based violence on our campus. And in our office, of course, we address these things through our investigations. It's really hard for me to see that. And dealing with these issues. One of the things that we are doing that we see a need for is getting the word out, and that's been mentioned several times and by various folks this morning of it can be marketing or just getting issues. So we are in the process also of revamping our website and making it more robust, and I think it'll be addressing more of the issues that people have concerned about. The Title IX services have been a big issue at UNR lately, and so we're addressing everyone's concerns. We're being more transparent and just even with our statistics and posting those every month that haven't been before, so people know what we're doing here in this area. Thank you. For next slide, please. These are the actions taken by our Office of Equal Opportunity in Title IX. Of course, the reporting and the investigation procedures. We now have an intake team that deals with our complaints. So we address them if we get a complaint within 72 hours, so we don't have a delay in any kind of response. We have a team that works with folks when they do make a complaint to come in and talk and go through the intake process where we can explain what to expect, what we can do, what we can't do, and we can provide supportive measures if that's what folks want. My colleague in UNLV with the Care Center just went through a lot of the different kinds of supportive measures, things like we do the same, referrals for counseling services. We have what sounds like it's similar to your care team in UNLV. It's Nevada Cares here, where we have advocates that do the similar kind of work, helping folks. We have the advocates will at times when needed, or request will sit in on our interviews with our investigators to support folks reporting these kinds of issues. Of course, we can change housing assignments. We can work with our academic, our faculty folks to make it more comfortable for people in the classroom. Of course, we work very closely with the police as well. No contact directives through our office are also often asked for. Training of personnel, we're working through creating a new system there in our office for training. Personally, right now we have the training every 2 years for our faculty and staff, and anyone coming on board, it's mandatory. But then with our students, we provide training in this area for all our new students and transfer students, but we're going to, with this new position, work on having additional resources and training for our students as well when it comes to power-based violence, because we do see a need. I know in your survey you had mentioned that folks had wanted to, at UNR, have a little bit more information, so we're addressing that. I think we're looking for help there for that training and education for students. And then coordinating with law enforcement, we work very well with our police department on campus, and their advocate there works closely with us. We have two additional, we have the Nevada Cares as well as the police department advocates that help us with the power-based violence for our complainants. Next slide, please. Additional referral services for our crisis intervention. We can reach out to our community as well as our crisis or our counseling centers that we have on campus. So we work with referring out folks to domestic violence shelters, rape crisis centers, things like that. And I know that there are times where students, while we provide that on our campus, sometimes they just want a little bit of distance for their comfort. So our nonprofits in the community are really helpful for us in that area. Same with the counseling and therapy. Sometimes we can refer outside if they're not comfortable, not that we can't handle it. They just sometimes just want that distance. Legal advocacy, that's particularly for our undocumented students. We have a program on campus that deals with those students and helping them navigate as they need through the system. Safety planning is done, of course, and then I've already mentioned their prevention and education program that they were moving forward on. And I know there are some support groups that are available through Nevada Cares and a counseling center as well. Thank you. Next slide. More referral services in the community, transitional housing, which is usually done, of course, through one of our nonprofits. Medical advocacy is where if somebody needs a forensic exam, we have a system in the Reno area. It's a sexual assault response team that works with folks to make sure that they get the forensic exams if they need it and to navigate that. Financial assistance, again, that's primarily through our UndocuPack group that also help with power-based violence specifically to that population. We have translation services if folks need that, because I think you gave a pretty good significant number of our campus as related to the others. Like with UNLV, we have Hispanic and Asian is our need usually that needs the linguistic services, and we provide that for them as well. And that's there's no fee to any of this stuff, as well as, again, the undocumented student program, the UndocuPack. Thank you. Next slide. I think this next slide, is this going to be you, Chief? I'll take it. I think it is. Before I hand it over, I'm going to hand the rest of the presentation over to our Chief of Police with UNR, Eric James. But I did want to make a real quick comment. Someone mentioned earlier in the program about reaching students before they get here, the younger students in the community. And I just kind of want to echo that. I think that statistically we know that many of our students coming on campus have already experienced physical or sexual abuse in their life before they step onto our campus as students. And so we know that the stress of just higher ed and that whole thing can be very triggering and stressful and bring that. So I do echo that. I think we need to have a responsibility to reach out to our younger population in the community. And maybe we'll do that with this new position, is try to bridge that and get some education into those systems. So it's not so overwhelming by the time they reach us. Thank you.
Good morning, Eric James, Chief of Police, Northern Command. So I just want to kind of connect and go over what Ziva mentioned. First of all, it's a very holistic approach on the campus. The support services and the wraparound services are phenomenal. And so connecting with people on campus through counseling services, Student Health Center, NV Cares, the Disability Resource Center, Title IX, and Victims of Crime Treatment Center, all very much part of the power-based violence program here in Northern Nevada. Next slide, please. Some of the other things that we also look at are the Domestic Violence Resource Center, Safe Embrace, Crisis Support Services of Northern Nevada, Sexual Assault Support Services, other system-based advocates such as the District Attorney's Office that we're now part of, Nevada 211, our center within the community, and then the Northern Nevada Legal Aid as well. Next slide, please. Kind of continuing on with the Victim Services Coordinator, we assist with NSHE affiliated people filing those protection orders. We accompany any NSHE affiliated people with victims to court proceedings, offer support and resources to community members who's been a victim of a crime, be present during law enforcement interviews. We assist victims with housing related issues. Then we communicate with instructors, professors, and supervisors, kind of like what Ziva said, as part of a no contact order, along with our great team down at Student Services to help if those individuals may be in the same classes together to get no contact orders and to make accommodations for both sides. Next slide, please. We also accompany any NSHE affiliated people who are victims of sexual assault forensic exams. And this is all done for us 24/7, 365, as Dayla Gibson, our victim services coordinator. She is available at all times. And we also have a backup team as well. Be available for witnesses and cases to provide support services. Be available for secondary and tertiary victims of crimes. Assist with answering questions, provide support and resources, and then offer follow-up care and reach out to check in on people even after the conclusion of the cases. Dayla is so good at making sure that there's a connection made after as well for that follow-through service. Next slide, please. I'm going to cover MV Cares. That's Daniel, Fred, and Lex Rodriguez. They're a phenomenal team on campus, based at the University of Nevada Research Center for the application of substance abuse technologies. NV Cares is a program authorized by 34 USC subsection 2125. It's funded by a grant through the Office of Violence Against Women, specifically the campus program grant, which is aimed to reduce relationship violence, sexual assault, and stalking on campus. Next slide, please. Just some of the things that they've been doing. Since 2015, Nevada Cares has been providing education and outreach across campus, community to raise awareness about relationship violence, sexual assault, or stalking. They do that through the trainings, provided events, tabling, Pactivist peer program. The program offers students the opportunity to develop leadership, communication, and advocacy skills while empowering their peers by providing information about violence prevention and active bystander intervention, something that we just got done talking a little bit about ago. And then they offer prevention efforts are requested by numerous offices, organizations, departments, and affiliated groups. And I know that Ziva, as well as my organization, as well as others, reach out to Daniel, Fred, and his team quite a lot. They are a phenomenal resource. Next slide, please. Most recently, NV Cares began providing direct services through the advocate coordinator located at NV Cares Advocacy Center. It's the only confidential advocacy program at the University of Nevada, Reno campus who serves students, faculty, and staff. The advocates are a link between the individual, the campus-based resources, the programs, and the community at large. And then advocates are guided by students, faculty, and staff when deciding which services will be the most impactful during each appointment. Next slide, please. They facilitate conversations between programs and individuals to break down barriers and allow resources to become more easily accessible. Advocates can attend any of the meetings with the individual receiving services, so as long as it's requested by the individual. And the advocates connect individuals seeking services of on-campus resources as well as off-campus, depending on the needs of the individual. I think you're noticing a theme here. It's based on the individual. Next slide, please. These are just, again, some of our other on-campus resources we provide. We've talked quite a little bit about this, so I'll just kind of leave that. Next slide, please. And again, with some of our off-campus, I want to make sure that we're all aware that it's not only on campus, it's also off-campus. So our Safe Embrace with Emergency Housing Crisis Call Line, Domestic Violence Resource Center, Emergency Housing Crisis Call Center, Crisis Support Northern Nevada, again, the Crisis Call Line, Sexual Assault Support Group with the Safe Appointments. And then also we work very closely with the Reno Police Department, Washoe County Sheriff's Department, Sparks Police Department to make sure that all off-campus reporting can come to us as well as to them if it happened in their jurisdiction. Next slide, please. All right, and thank you. And we'll take any questions you might have.
Elizabeth Gunn for the record. Thank you both for the presentation, resources, leadership, expertise. Are there any comments, questions for our colleagues representing UNR?
Kevin Lee Martinez for the record. First of all, thank you so much for your presentation. I'm glad to see that there's a lot of resources that UNR it's allowing the students to utilize both on campus and off campus. Based on the survey responses that we've gotten, what attempts are your office taking to kind of like market better these resources so the students understand where to go or how to go about their experiences within UNR?
I guess I can address it. As far as our office, we just met with our marketing team. That's a very good question. Just last week, we were going to push out a marketing campaign and hopefully get that out. We're hoping by May or sometime in May. Like I mentioned earlier, we're already revamping the website. We're looking at rebranding the office itself and trying to get that out there. So that's an active campaign in the process now for us.
Thank you so much. The next question that I have is, again, based on the survey, there seems to be a kind of like mistrust between the student body and either the office of Title IX within UNR or faculty who are surrounding that specific area. Is there a new kind of like approach that the office is kind of like attempting to kind of like bridge that mistrust and connect more the students with the resources that they have?
Yeah, again, I think the marketing, the rebranding, this position that we're putting in place are all efforts that we're making in trying to reach our community better and be open and let folks know that we're here, we're listening. Like I said, I've been out as much as I possibly can, introducing myself and listening to what the concerns are. And I think they're real. That's why we're adding the position. And President Sandoval's been amazing in supporting us. So we're continuing to do that. And like I said, there should be a marketing campaign starting up by May, if not sooner, to address that. And hopefully, they'll have better trust and confidence in the office.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments for our UNR colleagues? All right, thank you both once again for the presentation and for your valuable time. We very much appreciate it. All right, moving ahead to the next institution. With us is Griffin Farrar from Nevada State University. And thank you for being here.
Can you hear me? Lovely. Hi, everybody. My name is Griffin Farrar, and I have the privilege of serving as the Associate Dean of Students at Nevada State. So let's see a sentence slide. Hey, I am ready. I'm prepared.
Elizabeth Gunn for the record. Griffin, my apology, and my apology to our CSN colleague. I read those out of order, so the slides were in correct order. So I'm sorry. Okay, we have it up now. So
Happy to switch if needed.
Okay, so we're going to put you right back on the spot.
Lovely.
Again, my apology to everyone for reading the institutions out of order. Please, Mr. Farrar, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Again, Griffin Farrar. I was asked to come and share a little bit about what Nevada State is doing. So give you a little bit of context on us and then jump into what we're doing, and then happy to try and answer any questions that I can. So next slide. This is Nevada State at a glance. So we just wanted to provide you with the context of who we are. We have predominantly female identified students on our campus. It's the breakdown of our 3 different schools: education, LASB, and nursing. We have 44% of our students that are part-time, and 52% of our students identify as first generation. So we always think it's important to provide context on who our students are, who it is that we are serving at Nevada State. Next slide, please. Nevada State Title IX. So these are a couple things that we are working on in terms of our Title IX efforts and responses. So on the employee side, we are working on some employee trainings. We already have them, and I know that those are always being reviewed by our HR team to make sure that those trainings are as robust as we can. Those trainings are mandatory upon hire, and then every 2 years afterwards, employees are required to go through that retraining. For the student side, new student orientation, we have a robust and always getting more robust Title IX section where we're talking about preventing violence, how to identify violence, how to intervene if we are seeing and identifying these types of situations on our campus. And then we have some customizable training by the UNLV Care Center, which we'll talk about in just a minute as we are expanding our partnership with that organization and with that entity. And then we have a new, and something that I'm really proud of, our new incident reporting website. So if you go to nevadastate.edu/report, all of our incident reports are housed on this one landing page on our website for students, staff, faculty, and the general public to submit incident reports through the Maxient platform as we are building that out. And that's one of the efforts that I, as the Chief Conduct Officer, am integrally involved with. Not all of the reports are final. We are still working as we are building out our teams to expand those, but it's definitely a good starting point for us when previous to this, we did not have a centralized repository for collecting that data. Next slide, please. This table came from a campus safety and security report that was done April of last year prior to my arrival at Nevada State, where it was breaking down the data that was available and collected in regards to these specific offenses. The group that worked on this took a deep dive into a number of different areas, not just in our Title IX space, but campus conduct, academic misconduct, all of these different conduct-related concerns. But we did want to specify this data for you. And then we currently have 5 campus security authorities trained on our campus. That number is low, and we are working towards increasing that number. I actually have a meeting, today's Thursday this week, with a couple folks as we talk about how do we expand that number and how do we get buy-in from our faculty and staff to increase our campus security authorities at Nevada State. Next slide. Student resources. So again, we are here to serve students. We want to make sure that our students understand and know what we are offering. So on the left is a presentation, is a conversation about consent that our CEDI office, in collaboration with the Office of Student Wellness, is putting on this week. Goodness. There's the flyer, other things. We've got the non-clinical emotional support. We've got some community resources and referrals. That's within our case management, so that would live in our student wellness office. We have a dedicated case manager who's working with students as they're navigating, and then we have our mental health clinician who works with this and then also helps people get referred out into the community. We have on-campus housing, and as such, we have a couple spaces dedicated for temporary rooms on campus should we need those spaces to move students for safety or security reasons. And then student programming, the 2 main offices that are working on student programming are our CEDI office and then Student Life, who we're always looking for ways to infuse education into our fun. That way students are getting the best of both from us. Next slide, please. And then finally, like I mentioned earlier, the Care Center. So Nevada State being a smaller institution, may not have all of the different infrastructure pieces So we want to make sure that our partnerships with other organizations are as robust as possible. One of those being the Care Center. So we started this partnership in 2021. As you can see at the bottom, and then on the right side, we've got some of the numbers of the Nevada State students and Nevada State population that has worked with the Care Center. One of the things that they do is the care advocacy and the virtual support services. Again, our students being first gen, our students being lower income may not have the ability to get to different places. So having that virtual option is really important to us. They do outreach and education. Again, while we are the experts on our campus and understanding student programming, we want to make sure that there are others out there who are sharing that important work. And then awareness. Unless our students know about our resources, how can they take advantage of it? So partnering with them, sharing some of the different resources via different methods is important and something that we continue to think about, as it's the work of educating and supporting is never done. So that is what I have for you. Happy to, again, try and answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. Farrar. Are there any questions for our colleague from Nevada State University?
Okay, thank you. I do have one question about your new resource for the centralized online reporting system. You touched on it a little bit. Is it routed directly to Title IX or to like a group of people from various offices?
Yeah, so on that page, there are currently 8 different incident reporting forms, which are routed to different people depending. A number of them are routed via me as our kind of primary Maxient user. But as we build out some of our teams, we're in the process of attempting to hire a director of Title IX. Once that person is onboarded, then any Title IX forms would be routed to them. Right now, most of those forms are coming to me for disseminating out to campus.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments, any inquiries from Reno? All right, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and presentation today.
Thanks, y'all.
All right, returning to the proper order of things, College of Southern Nevada, again, my apology for inverting the order there. Welcome Mr. Armin Asharian, who is the Director of Institutional Equity.
There we are. Okay. Again, greetings, colleagues, partners, friends. My name is Armin Asharian, for the record, the Director of the Office of Institutional Equity in Title IX for the College of Southern Nevada. I'm going to give a presentation today on the services that we provide at CSN. The presentation overall is one that was created internally, so I'm just going to focus on this one slide for you all. And many of the services we provide are shared, certainly with other institutions, but I'm going to give you what's most relevant to the CSN community as far as I'm concerned. First and foremost, we have up there is our partnership with the University of Police Services Southern Command. We've come over the years to develop a strong working relationship with them, and I would like to credit the Director Garcia and the assistant directors for that, and of course, the officers that serve under them. So why would I start with that? One, when there's an emergency, they are the first responders that we have. They have put together an app, which is, as you're probably well aware, marketed to each of the institutions here in the South. I am a strong advocate of pushing for that. You'll hear about it in every training I do. The reason being is with it. When you're faced with a crisis, you're not going to sit there and think, where are they on my directory? You're right? You're going to click that app, you're going to click the 911, and you're going to get to them immediately. If you did type 911 on your phone, you'd be routed to either Metro, North Las Vegas Police, and so on. And that would take more time. The other thing that I like about that app is that if you're in a situation of crisis and you do not feel that you can talk to somebody over the phone, you have the ability to text the police right there. Fantastic. I also want to point out that they have an officer who is dedicated to being able to help community members in need, which we have used time and again, and my appreciation for that. And I should go back to the app one more time. There is the ability to use that app to request somebody to escort you from your vehicle to your place of work or to your classroom and back again. Many times we've had to make use of that, and every time I've been very grateful that that's been there to provide. The college also has CAPS, which is Counseling and Psychological Services. CAPS can be accessed through a variety of methods. It's provided, the service is provided by a third-party vendor, which is there to assure confidentiality. Students have up to 8 free sessions per semester. Employees have access to the Employee Assistance Program. This, of course, is a total confidential service. I believe they have about 5 sessions available to them. Why that's so chosen to be that way is that we have elected not to have these services for employees on campus so that people would be, those who work for us would have that complete privacy. And it allows us to use a service where we have experts who can provide those folks with a complete wraparound experience as needed. And as you know, power-based violence isn't constrained to sexual harassment in situations, therefore. So we have a variety of offices that can assist. And I want to start with employee relations. People have troubled, if not toxic, relationships with their coworkers, sometimes with their supervisors. It adds undue stress to them. I understand that. So we have our Director of Employee Relations, and she is able to investigate situations, mediate with folks. On par with that, we also have the ombuds people at the College of Southern Nevada who can also sit down and help mediate those relationships. Often, I find that people need to have the opportunity to be heard. And if they have that opportunity, they can think of the options themselves. And they can also benefit from learning new sets of skills to help them negotiate through those situations. And I believe those 2 offices provide that. And then winding down to my office, the Office of Institutional Equity in Title IX. It has in its charter to identify, stop, and prevent and offer remediation in instances of discrimination and sexual harassment. So again, sexual harassment is along a continuum. What we do, and what I'm proud of the most, is that we're able to provide interim supportive measures to people. Many times they don't want to go through and do a full Title IX investigation. I understand that. But they're still able to come to us. They're able to have a place, have some people who they can talk to, somebody who can show them what their options are, tell them what their rights are, give them resources. One of those resources is, of course, the UNLV Care Center. And I want to point out that that is one of the resources I value tremendously. And here's why. I have a wonderful resource list. Okay, we go through it every so often. It's painstaking to correct it. But when I give that to somebody, it's call this group, call that group, go to that website. It's disjointed. When they go to the care center, they meet with somebody who's able to give them a whole plan, who's able to give them that whole wraparound service. I can't tell you all enough how valuable and how important that is. And I'd like to see that continue for the long run. We also, there's a lot of question about what do you do for marketing? I want to talk about the training that we do, because that's the first place that we catch people. And I'm proud of what we do by way of training. We have every new employee meet with us in person before hours, and we have a wonderful training program for them. We have wonderful discussion. They learn about us. They learn that if they can't remember how to get a hold of us, to look for our posters that are all over campus that have the policy, Title IV, Chapter 8, Section 14. It has how to get a hold of me. They know they can go up to the HR department and ask those people who deal with harassment and discrimination. They know that they can go to the website, they can go online and they can fill out the grievance form there, they can print it, they can give us a call, they can use the Title IX coordinator at CSN email. So we give them a variety of channels to get a hold of us. Additionally, I want to point out that we have the BIT committee on campus. And while we think of BIT committee as people who are there to help students who pose a certain amount of concern to the community, what I like about our group, what I've come to appreciate about our group, is that having worked together, we have a group of people with a variety of expertise, from student conduct, the police services, faculty, Office of Institutional Equity, DRC. And when we find students that come to us because they are in crisis, I find it's the same people on the phone. We get this chain of people calling and working on the problem to provide as much of a total solution as possible. So that's one of the, I think one of the best things that we offer as far as services is the people at CSN who work together to help these folks. And as far as reporting is concerned, just want to make it clear, they have a variety of opportunities to get a hold of any one of us at the college. Faculty, staff know that they can contact the Chief Human Resource Officer. They can contact me, one of the conduct officers, contact the Vice President of Student Affairs, and we'll start working on it together. We will funnel you to the right place. And so again, it's a group of people. If it's a service that we provide, it's a group of people who care and can jump into action. I think that's the best answer I can provide you all. With that, do you have any questions for me? All right. Well, thank you very much. And particularly thank you for the work that you're doing.
Elizabeth Gunn for the record. Thank you so much, Mr. Osherian. I appreciate your time and attention and presenting the resources at CSN. All right, turning to the next institution in order is Great Basin College. Mr. Jake Rivera, Title IX Coordinator and Vice President of Student Affairs, is presenting for GBC. Mr. Rivera.
All right. For the record, Jake Rivera, Vice President for Student and Academic Affairs at Great Basin College, and I also serve as the Title IX coordinator. Our Director of Environmental Safety, some of you on the task force probably have known Pat Anderson. She retired last year, so I'm going to be wearing a different hat today. So I'm going to start off with just a little bit of some perspective about Great Basin College. So GBC has locations, 5 in Elko, Winnemucca, Ely, Battle Mountain, and Pahrump. And we cover 86,000 square miles of rural Nevada. We're a small institution, and as you're going to hear today on some of our percentages, just please keep in mind that those percentages reflect a very small number of students. Many of GBC's students work full-time, they have internships, and we have a zero tolerance policy for sexual violence. We also have a no alcohol policy at the college that we feel helps to limit instances of power-based violence. And trust me, every year I either have staff or students asking if there will ever be a change to the alcohol policy. And our president, President Helens, repeatedly has always said no, which I'm in agreement. So we can move to the next slide. All right. So prior to the current survey, we had our spring 22 and then only this spring of 2019 that goes back to pre-pandemic. This first slide points out some of the results we reported back then, and I will touch on both the 22 and 20, some of the results that we talked about earlier today. So can we go to the next slide? So a few of the changes that I wanted to highlight in comparison of 2019, 22, and what we talked about earlier this morning, that we can still see that is trending for Great Basin College in the right direction. We still see our students reporting that they strongly agree, I feel safe at Great Basin College. That's very important for us. We see that there's a decrease in those students surveyed who reported having a friend or acquaintance who was a victim of unwanted sexual experience. We see that there's a decrease in those students surveyed who had witnessed a situation that could lead to sexual assault. GBC wants to develop new opportunities that address the interpersonal violence and definitely promoting prevention at an earlier age, as discussed throughout this meeting today, is a direction that we want to look at. Many of our students, our age is getting, just on a side note, our age group is getting younger each year, and making sure that in most of our cases, our locations are connected to a high school, generally right across the street. And so working with high schools to make sure that we are having those discussions on power-based violence and what that means, I think is definitely a direction that we want to continue to promote and really have a stronger collaboration in that aspect with the high schools. And then finally, I just wanted to mention that we saw most students who responded reported that their assault took place off of the GBC campus. Can we go to the next slide? All right, so while the student campus climate surveys are valuable tools for gathering insights and informing decisions, they should be used in conjunction with other methods to ensure a comprehensive and robust approach to decision making. So if you take a quick look at GBC's Clery Act statistics, in most of the Clery categories, GBC had no reported cases for 2021 and 22. But toward the end here, so we're going to go to the next slide. Okay, and then we're going to go to the next slide. And then we're going to go to the next slide. All right, and let's stop there for a second. So here you see in 2022, under statutory rape, that went from 0 to 21. So I was surprised. President Helens was surprised. So we wanted to immediately find out what was the cause of that increase. And so what I can tell you about this particular situation, it involved the victim as well as the violator for all 21 instances. And that's also based on the Clery reporting formula. So while a reduction in Clery Act instances in a 3-year period for GBC is very encouraging, that you see these zeros all over the place, and that's what we want. We want that to look like every single time. So it's essential that we continue monitoring and addressing campus safety concerns, as well as continue to assess our safety measures and evaluation of prevention programs. Can we go to the next slide? All right, so one of the things that we wanted to discuss today was services. So at Great Basin College, we believe that power-based violence requires a multifaceted approach that includes prevention efforts, comprehensive support services, and effective response protocols. But GBC does not offer counseling services on campus. We are also aware that the absence of adequate staff to address power-based violence on campus can pose challenges and risks to the safety and well-being of our students. At GBC, what we have been able to do is provide referrals to local community providers that have trained professional services for victims of power-based violence. Our behavioral intervention team plays a vital role in early identification and intervention, as they are often the first point of contact for reporting concerning behaviors. When reports involve power-based violence, our BIT team responds promptly and effectively, coordinating with campus resources such as our Title IX officers, law enforcement, and community support organizations. GBC participates with Better Mind. Through this project and the assistance of an NSHE grant, we not only secured funding for mental health support services, including mental health first aid training for the entire GBC community. And by the way, we had 200 participants at Great Basin College with the Better Mind first aid mental health training. But we also facilitated direct teletherapy clinical services for our students. Without these third-party services, we have to depend on local community resources. And some of our communities, as you know, have very few resources. Training college staff, such as BIT, Title IX staff, and housing RAs on power-based violence is crucial for creating a campus environment that prioritizes safety, support, and prevention. At GBC, we are developing power-based staff training that focuses on the various forms of power-based violence, recognizing signs and red flags, trauma-informed practices, bystander intervention, and what it means to be culturally competent as it relates to power-based violence in marginalized communities. All employees at GBC are required to go through Title IX training. This fall, GBC will have a power-based violence campus awareness campaign that we feel is essential for raising awareness, fostering dialogue, and promoting prevention efforts within the GBC community. The campaigns will also focus on promoting healthy relationships and bystander intervention. One final consideration I would leave this task force with, we would love to collaborate more with our university partners who may have graduate students who are in search of intern opportunities and can help close the gap that small institutions like Great Basin College or Western face when it comes to resources. Currently, UNLV's counseling program is working towards new initiatives with mental health and counseling at our Pahrump location, which is located in Southern Nevada. And Great Basin College would love to collaborate in the North as well with those graduate interns. With that, that ends my presentation. And are there any questions?
Kevin Lee Martinez for the record. First of all, thank you so much for your presentation. I just had a quick question. Are the results from the 2023 annual security report in, or we only have 2020, 21, 2022?
Are you talking about for the survey or Clary Act?
The Clary statistics.
Okay. I probably don't have the 20, was it 21, 22? Let's see. I'm sorry. Yeah, we have the 20, 21, and 22 for the Clary Act. But I did not have any other Clary Act statistics at this time.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Thank you for the answer. The next question that I have is, based on the survey that the task force sent out, it says that around estimating 35%, above 20, below 40% of the respondents believe that they're victims of interpersonal violence within Great Basin College, which is the largest percentage out of the entirety of the institutions. Is there like a reason why this kind of like numbers spiked up between when the survey was submitted and when the annual security reports were sent out from the past years?
Yeah, so the only thing that I can comment on that particular statistic is, I think as we noted, in terms of what's happened on campus versus what's happening in our communities, there's still a difference, and then making sure how are we reaching out to those students who may have been impacted or with things I think that we talked about earlier with the interpersonal. So I saw the increase in that, very concerned about what steps can we take towards making sure that students are aware of resources that are available to them, whether they're at the college or if those are resources within their communities. But yes, that statistic on the increase for interpersonal violence that some students may experience is definitely of concern and something that we plan to focus on.
Thank you so much for the question, for the answers.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera, for your presentation and for the work you all are doing at GBC. Very much appreciated. Turning to our next institution. Truckee Meadows Community College. And I believe our presenters, our very own Ms. Erin Fruck and Mr. Sean Babanta. So I turned it over to you all.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me? Oh, now. Okay, sorry. Good morning. My name is Erin Fruck, she, her pronouns. I'm the lead counselor at the TMCC Counseling Center and also a member of the task force.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sean Mabanta. I am the campus victim advocate working through an MOU with both TMCC and WNC as well.
Yes. Thank you for having us today. Truckee Meadows Community College is the community college based just up the hill from UNR, and we are an Hispanic serving HSI designated institution. We have about 10,000 students, and I'm going to be talking about the resources from the student perspective. So if we could go to our first slide, please. The TMCC Counseling Center is under the Student Life umbrella and Student Services. We have a very robust counseling center that provides lots of resources and services for students. We help students navigate, obviously, personal educational decisions, providing both mental health services, career services, outreach services, and education on campus, which I'll talk a little bit more. Our primary location is at the Dandini campus. We do have satellite campuses in town, and we do outreach at those other campuses. But the main counseling center hub is located at our main campus at Dandini. We do operate Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, but I will talk about what services we have for weekends and off hours. And we offer appointments to students both in person, Zoom, or telephone. Next slide, please. So we do provide personal confidential appointments for all credit-bearing students that attend TMCC. And that means that anyone that is enrolled in at least one credit has access to free mental health services through our student counseling center. And to access that, they just need to call or email and we can set up an appointment. Appointments usually happen within 24 to 48 hours. We also have access to psychiatric referrals that our counseling center pays for. We have an MOU with the University of Nevada Medical Behavioral Health Clinic, where a student can see a psychiatrist in person for a variety of reasons, from diagnosis to med management. We've also just started recently a telepsychiatry service through UWell, and we're calling it Wizard Wellness because of our Wizard the Lizard mascot. And these are online psychiatry services that we also pay for. For both services, we can pay for up to 6 psychiatry appointments for students. The online services also offer the opportunity for diagnosis med management. We have a daily on-call counselor. So anytime that the office is open between 8 and 5, if we do have a crisis come in, we have an on-call counselor that can see that student right away. In addition to the telepsychiatry services, we also have our Wizard Wellness 24/7 support line. This is similar to the crisis call line that used to be in place, and we still obviously refer students to 988 as well. but the Wizard Wellness 24/7 support line is specific to college students in crisis, and they are available to TMCC students 24/7 all year long. So some of the really cool things we're able to provide in addition is our MOU with the Crisis Support Services of Nevada and having a campus victim advocate on campus. And Sean's going to talk at length about what services he provides at TMCC. It's really a very cool program, and we're really lucky to have Sean on campus. In addition, we do weekly, monthly education and outreach on campus, events on campus that range in all sorts of mental health and wellness topics and activities. But we do, and Sean will talk about this in more detail, focus several times a year or at least several times a semester on issues surrounding power-based violence. We do a variety of marketing, including, I'm sure everyone does the same, flyers, tabling, emails, texts, the student newsletters, trying to encourage professors and instructors to talk about it in their classes. All those things, the VV TVs on all the different campuses for TMCC and things like that. Next slide, please. And just a snapshot of our amazing staff. This is our awesome counseling center staff that works so well with our students. We have 4 professional counselors on staff. And in addition to, we call it a mental health professional, but basically it acts as, the position acts as a case management social worker. So we can provide students who need additional community resources, anywhere from housing to food to a lot of the specialty resources depending on the individual, like Safe Embrace or domestic violence resources, additional resources with law enforcement or legal services depending on the power-based violence incident and what they need. Our amazing team can provide personal crisis, career, and case management for anyone who walks in our door. And that's specifically for TMCC students. We'll talk about programs for faculty and staff as well. Next slide, please.
Awesome. So now we're going to turn it over to me. And thank you, Erin, for that lovely introduction as well. So I am the campus victim advocate who has MOUs with both TMCC and WNC. So my main presentation will be with TMCC, but just know that these services apply to WNC as well. So I come from a nonprofit organization called Crisis Support Services of Nevada. And we are part of the National 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. So basically what I provide to TMCC and WNC students is free and confidential advocacy for survivors of power-based violence for students, staff, and faculty of TMCC and WNC. So I have different availabilities basically for both organizations. So for TMCC, I am available in person Wednesdays and Thursdays every week from 9 to 5, but throughout the whole week, on weekdays, I'm available through call or text through my work phone, and that's 9 to 5 as well, and I'm also available for email at any point in time additionally. If we could go to the next slide, please. All right, so some of the things I provide, since I come from Crisis Support Services of Nevada, not only do I provide advocacy, but also suicide and crisis intervention. So in immediate crisis intervention, I also provide safety planning, very similar to my colleagues at CARES Center at UNLV and Nevada CARES at UNR, except it's sort of a one-person show. So I try to keep the gears turning every so often. So safety planning, resource referral, not only on campus, but also off campus. I have very close relationships as our organization runs the SART team, the Sexual Assault Response Team. So we respond to all of those exams for Washoe County, Northern Nevada, whenever someone needs a forensic exam. We also do follow-ups. So after that forensic exam or any student that I meet with, I offer to them to follow up with them, see how they're doing in a couple weeks or days, and provide that long-term care as well. And also help with applications. So applications such as VOCP, where folks can have reimbursement for expenses directly related to their assault or crime. Next is TPOs, so helping those folks be protected from their perpetrator, and also the confidential address program as well. Similar to other advocates, I also help in accompaniment, so providing emotional support to survivors as they're going through this process and as they're just having to tell the story a multitude of times, having that emotional support as they power through all of these systems that are in place, especially the law enforcement interview and even the detective interview. If they want to report to Title IX as well, I can be there for that. Cool. If we could go to the next slide, please. So I know there's been a lot of talk about prevention and outreach and marketing especially. So I make key note of that while trying to outreach, especially since I've only been in this position for about a year now. So getting my word out to the universities we partner with is very important to me, and I make special care to try to reach numerous populations throughout the university. So I table at least once a month. I have my flyers posted around all the campuses, not only the main campus on Dandini, but our satellite campuses as well. I have a banner up in the Student Center that is available for students to see while they pass by. And we also plan a number of events. So in particular, I'll be talking about our Domestic Violence Awareness Month events in October, having Purple Thursday and Take Back the Night as well. If we could go to the next slide, please. All right. So just to give everyone sort of a picture of the flyer that I have posted around campus. So the front of the flyer informs students of the CVA program, my availability and how to contact me, especially not only a QR code in case students are more willing to use technology, but also just listing my information plain as a phone number and email. Again, it also has my in-person availability for campus as well on Wednesdays and Thursdays. On this flyer, I think it's important to not only inform about resources, but also educate. So when I table, I make note to educate folks on the definition of power-based violence, and also listing on how I can help students, staff, and faculty as well. On the back of the flyer, I also teach about sort of my theme, so the importance and significance of the butterfly, basically as a symbol of rebirth and restoration, that someone can go through a tough time and still come out of it beautiful. And I also teach a little bit about consent using the FRIES acronym, as many of you may know already. Really teaching folks about what it means to consent to something and be fully informed of that consent as well. If we could go to the next slide, please. All right, so the banner that is located at the TMCC Student Center is pretty simple. So it has a tagline up top that love shouldn't hurt and that you deserve to heal, and basically has my contact information similar to my flyer. If we could go to the next slide. And now I will be talking about some of the events that we have been doing and plan to do in the next month. So back in October of 2023, we had a huge campaign just around this TMCC Student Center. So we had purple ribbons on a bunch of staff and faculty's doors, and also informed them of the significance of that ribbon, explaining that it was in support of domestic violence survivors. We had the clothesline project, so you can see on the bottom picture. We had shirts along the railways of our stairs in our main student center with encouraging messages written by staff and mainly students to survivors. We had a table basically with cards, and students had the opportunity to write a note to a survivor. After that message was checked by me, I gave those letters, or we inputted those letters in the folders that we give to survivors at their forensic exams. Next is Purple Thursday. So I believe it was the last week in October. I encouraged students, staff, and faculty to all wear purple. And then also I tabled weekly for the month of October as well. If we could go to the next slide, please. And next is our super exciting, super anticipated Take Back the Night event, which is open to all our friends and folks in the Reno Sparks community. So it is on Wednesday, April 24th from 11 to 3 p.m. at the TMCC Student Center. And we're collaborating with a bunch of community organizations as well, including Safe Embrace, ourselves, and UNR as well. So this event is open to the community, and we welcome all our friends in Northern Nevada to join as well. And then we could go to the next slide, please. So these next slides are provided by our Title IX coordinator, Kim Studebaker, and basically informing of the resources that Title IX provides. So all students, faculty, and staff, and members of the campus community with sexual harassment and discrimination issues, including those that fall under Title IX, provides training in sexual assault, sexual harassment, and discrimination prevention, conducts internal Title IX and non-Title IX investigations, ensures compliance with all state and federal Title IX, sexual harassment, and discrimination laws. And I will turn it over to Erin to finish us off.
Yeah, next slide, please. I just want to say Kim wasn't able to be here today. She was going to come in and speak, but they're a little understaffed. They have some folks out, and she wasn't able to get away. So that's why Sean and I are filling in for her. Basically, the TMCC Human Resources Title IX website has a lot of featured on-campus resources, many of which we've talked about, including Counseling Center. We fall under the University Police Department and have a TMCC substation. We also have a very active Equity, Inclusion, and Sustainability office. The Counseling Center and Student Life has a really good relationship with student conduct, and the RBIT team is called Threat Assessment Team, where both Sean and I are also active members on the Threat Assessment Team. And you can see Sean is also featured as a on-campus resource. Next slide, please. Additional off-campus resources featured are all the different law enforcement agencies that our faculty, staff, and students have access to, in addition to local hospitals in town. Next slide, please. And additional resources, many of which some of our other colleagues talked about, and Sean and I touched on, but the sexual assault support services, crisis support services, the health department, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, the Trans Lifeline, PFLAG, Domestic Violence Resource Center, Safe Embrace, Northern Nevada or Nevada Network Against Domestic Violence, and the National Domestic Violence Hotline. All resources available to faculty, staff, and students. Next website or next slide, please. I think this is our last slide, but the Title IX office also provides Title IX video webinars that everyone on campus can access, in addition to state of Nevada resources to become as informed as they need to be or want to be. I think that's all of our slides. If there's any questions for us.
Elizabeth Gunn, thank you both so much for the presentation and sharing all the great resources that you all provide. Are there any questions for our TMCC colleagues? All right, thank you. Thanks so much once again. Finally, we turn to our colleagues from WNC, and Melody Dooley, Human Resource Director and Title IX Coordinator, will be presenting.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I've got a slight change to the first slide there. I am not President Dalpy, as she just mentioned. I'm Melody Dooley, Chief HR Officer, Chief of Staff, and Title IX Coordinator at Western Nevada College. We are a small rural college with campuses in Carson, Fallon, and Douglas. And we serve a county, 6 or 7 county radius rural communities. So we have a variety of resources on campus as well as off campus. We also have a variety of resources to help victims of power-based violence right from the start, throughout the process, and then through the healing process as well. As Sean mentioned, he is also a campus victim advocate for Western Nevada College. And that has been a great partnership for us. He is on campus every other Tuesday, so we have both on and off campus resources from the Campus Victim Advocate Program. We also offer multiple resources on our Wildcat Wellness page. That includes a 24-hour support line for students, as well as some mental health and wellness resources for students and employees. And then we also have our Employee Assistance Program, which includes resources for student workers. They have 24/7 support and resources and can fill a vital role in helping connect employees to counseling and other mental health resources. And one more thing before I leave this slide. On our website, we're very careful to clearly delineate which of our resources are confidential resources and which are obligated reporters. That way, if an employee or student wishes to report something, they aren't surprised later that they've talked to an obligated reporter, so they can decide if they want to talk to someone who will keep this completely confidential, or if they would like to talk to someone who is an obligated reporter and can help them make action. Next slide, please. Personnel at Western Nevada College maintain lists of resources in our service area. We have resource banks that include counseling and mental health, behavioral health, and support services, as well as community partner contact information. We also maintain a list of information where students and employees can receive free and or reduced cost legal services in our area. The the employee assistance program I mentioned on the previous slide also offers some free legal services as well as discounted legal services to employees as well. Next slide, please. Our other resources include the actions I mentioned a little bit earlier. We have complaint procedures that employees and students may utilize. We have the complaint procedure that is defined in the NSHE policy against unlawful harassment and discrimination. That would cover conduct which violates that policy and falls under Title IX, as well as conduct which may not fall under Title IX, but may still fall under the definition of unlawful discrimination and harassment. We also have the complaint procedure defined in the NSHE Student Code of Conduct, which would include any other prohibited conduct or perhaps power-based violence that may not fall under the Title IX or the other behavior outlined as prohibited in the unlawful discrimination and harassment policy. And then finally, regardless of whether someone wishes to make a report or a complaint, we provide remedies, interim measures, and supportive measures to any parties when prohibited conduct may occur. And they do not have to, as I mentioned, they don't have to file a report. They don't have to make a complaint. We also offer all of those supportive interim measures and resources if someone experiences something off campus and unrelated to our programs, but it's impacting their academics or their participation in work or student life on the campus. Next slide, please. We also have University Police Services at Western Nevada College, and they have a variety of services as well to victims of power-based violence. They can obviously take and investigate reports, but they also have several victim advocate services to help on the to help manage the non-criminal side of reports that they may receive. And then finally, they also maintain daily crime logs, and we work with them to produce our annual security report and Clery Act reporting. Next slide, please. And then before we go to questions, I just wanted to mention a few of the other institutions touched on some of the training that they offer, as well as some of their statistics and reporting numbers. I don't have slides on those, but I am prepared to speak to those if the task force would like. And I also just want to take a quick opportunity to thank the task force and those who were involved in developing and launching and then analyzing the survey. That is incredibly meaningful information that will help us direct our outreach efforts, which I think is a key. I think the survey results highlight a disconnect between what students and employees might be willing to report in a survey versus make a report to my office or someone else. We always have known that disconnect is there. The better information we have about that, then the better we can target our outreach efforts, which is critical. And we see, as I do outreach on the campus, I see a direct and an immediate correlation to outreach efforts and the reports that I then receive. So thank you all for that. I appreciate it. And that's it, if there's any questions.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Ms. Dooley. Any questions, comments for WNC? All right. Thank you so much for the work and the presentation, and we appreciate all that you do on your campuses. All right, that summarizes and concludes agenda item 6. Once again, thank you to all of the institutions and the colleagues who prepared and presented the presentations, and to those doing this important work. It's an impressive array of services, support, advocacy for our student populations, and so we appreciate the work and the presentations today. Moving on to agenda item 7, new business. This is a call for items for consideration at future meetings. So we'll pause and ask the task force members if there are items you would like considered for new business.
I'm not sure if there's already a list of new business to be considered that I'm just repeating or adding to. I think one area we may want to consider discussing more in depth would be how we're going to be using the survey results to inform our actionable items on the individual campuses, possibly a look and discussion around resources to support the work on these campuses, and then maybe a closer look at prevention and outreach and marketing efforts. It just sounds like that kind of summarizes some of the key needs and barriers that have been brought up during this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Any other items for consideration for new business at our next meeting? I'll suggest that when we're ready to take a deeper look at the survey, that we do some additional analysis of the results by demographic, because right now they're generalized across different demographics and populations. And so we might want to consider if certain populations of our students are impacted in certain areas of power-based violence. Any others before we go to public comment? All right. Agenda item 8, public comment.
Do we have any public comment in Reno?
There is no public comment in Reno.
Thank you. Is there any public comment in Las Vegas? We have no public comment in Las Vegas. SCS, do we have anyone on the call-in line?
Yes, we do have one caller. Caller with the number ending in 6993. Please press *6 to unmute. And you have 3 minutes to address the committee.
Hello, thank you for taking my call today. My name is Nicole Stella. Last name is Stella. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I actually wanted to call in regarding an experience that I had with the request to take the power-based violence survey. I want to note here that I am a queer Latina, a UNLV doctoral student, administrative and adjunct faculty member. And 2 days after I was in a UNLV student union classroom, shielding my students with my body from a shooter on my campus, who was specifically targeting faculty of color, as far as we know, I got a response to take a survey about my experiences with power-based violence. And when I shared my concerns in response to that email, the response that I got was a single line from an NSHE automated email that I could choose to opt out from all future NSHE surveys. I hope you all realize how inadequate that is. As someone with so many ties to NSHE, and in particular with 2.5 degrees from NSHE, I should not actually have to forfeit my ability to share information, my opinions, and my experiences with this administration that holds such tremendous power over my life. I would appreciate any effort to address this issue. I did email NSHE directly about this and received an email in response, but I haven't heard anything since. And additionally, I'm deeply concerned about the number of other students on my campus who may have received this exact reminder and given it attention, since all of our critical campus announcements were coming through email at that time. As an administrator, one of the first things I did after I was evacuated at gunpoint was to receive and act on a message to deactivate automated messages from my program. I would expect nothing less from our actual administration and from the folks that you paid to administer that survey. As part of what we're paying for is appropriate marketing and outreach. I hope you all think about this as you consider moving forward with the survey and as you consider the actual outcomes that came from that survey, because you may have actually disenfranchised a whole group of your constituents in that process. That's all. Thank you.
Callers, that is all the callers we have at this time.
Thank you. That concludes public comment.
All All right. Once again, thank you. Thank you to the task force members for your work in this important area. Thank you as well to our colleagues who presented today and helped facilitate this work. I look forward to seeing you all at the next meeting. The meeting is adjourned.